Uh, a big survey was put out by Austin to try and capture what was happening last year in terms of chaplaincy activity. What were people doing? And this was, I think, sent out in May, so we hadn't had that long. But it was really to try and capture a sense of what was so very different for us as we were beginning to go into this time. So these are Austin's slides. There's quite a lot of them, so I'm not going to use them all, but essentially to try and just give you a little bit of feedback and information about the survey, just because I know a number of us in AHPCC took part and just wondering perhaps what had happened to the results. So that was how things were in May last year, the spread of the infection and what was happening, and the figures were already beginning to be absolutely overwhelming. The aim of the study was to really understand how chaplains were delivering spiritual care when so much had changed. What were people doing? What were the changes, and what was the impact on ourselves, on our staff, and on the culture that we work in? So for those of you who took part in it, you remember that we were asked to first of all describe our setting, just who were we, what area of healthcare were we working in, these kind of factual questions to give us a bit of give Austin a bit of a framework to put us all into. And then it was about identifying key changes to the things that we normally do. Did we have access to COVID patients? Was our role understood? How were you used? All these sorts of potential changes that were happening to the way that chaplains worked. So these were part of the questions. Did you have regular supervision? Could you have been better deployed? What had the greatest impact on you? So very, very searching and key questions that were already becoming identifiable as what was happening to chaplains and the way that we were working. Initially, it was going to be a survey for Europe. You know, the title's in the name, the European Research Institute. But quite quickly, there was interest from North and South America, from Australia, some interest from India and Africa. And so the survey just sort of went global, which was really a surprise for the researchers and a very welcome one indeed. So that's the kind of overview of how people responded. I can't quite see Australia on there, but there was a huge response from America and Australia as well as from Europe. The outcome was that there were nearly 1,700 responses completed. It didn't take a long time to do, but it was quite a searching survey and study to do. It says it takes around 30 minutes, and I think it was 30 minutes well spent, because what was the the outcome was such an interesting picture of what people were doing. So this is going back to the factual information we gave about the mean age of chaplains and the mean time of appointment. Most people in their 50s, to be still in our 50s. This was, I think, so I can't quite say, this was gender, I believe. And this was education level of those completing the survey. Just to explain that in North America, the big number of people with a master's degree, it's slightly different educational system, as you'll understand. So what might be, in our terms, a master's degree is different to how it looks in America, hence the high number. And religion. So what was people's faith background? And again, the figures were there. All of this is available. I think we've got a link on the website, and certainly Austin and Anne's talk that was presented to the Transforming Web chaplaincy webinar is available, but this is just a little brief overview, so I won't go to that one. So the key things were really the key questions. Did your work setting change? Did you have access to COVID patients? How clear was your role? Did you have supervision? Could you be better deployed? What had the greatest impact? And how has the pandemic changed healthcare chaplaincy? Just a few light questions there to throw in, but each of one could have been a survey on its own. So for people's work setting, there was a very wide range of responses, from people being deployed to work from home, to stay in their setting but in a limited capacity. Settings changed for people, but less so for people in hospitals as a general rule. Access to COVID patients, both COVID and non-COVID. Again, there was a wariness, certainly to start with, about access, and you'll all have your own stories around these sorts of figures, and how real it was for you and what it was like. This was about roles, and I thought this was an interesting slide, because if you look at the sort of key and the graph, for a lot of people, this dissonance with what was expected and what was normal in role just changed for so many people. It really wasn't that clear for lots of people. There was this confusion about what a chaplain could do, couldn't do, should do, shouldn't do. So you can see that there was, around March, when we were really going into lockdown, there was quite a bit of what do we do, or how do we use chaplains, and from the chaplain themselves, what do I do in the situation? Supervision continued for lots of people, as you'll see. There was, as much as possible, people access supervision and reflective practice, and some of that was as a result of chaplains setting up group reflections and reflective practice sessions for staff, either virtually or, if possible, face-to-face, but mostly virtually. Could you have been better deployed? There was a real sense coming through that a lot of people experienced frustration about how they were being used, and how quickly organisations made decisions about what a chaplain could do. And that was certainly true in my own institution, where I was suddenly told, no, you're not coming anywhere near, you work from home and you make phone calls and you do that. Lots of people, I think, experienced quite a bit of frustration. I know people were sitting in hospital offices, not able to go on wards. Yeah, again, everybody will have their own story here. And some explanation around this. There were some interesting comments that came out that chaplain leadership should have been at the executive leadership table. Although we say that chaplains are integral team members, it didn't always pan out that way, and people felt frustrated there. Chaplains should have been more involved in decision making, and again, there was a sense that there was quite a distinct group, and chaplains weren't always part of that. Again, varied patterns. So what bothered you the most? And not surprisingly, it was the whole issue of social distancing, particularly in palliative care, between family members and dying patients. And we've heard already from some of those stories what that was like. It was just so unfamiliar, when our bread and butter work is really to be face to face at the bedside, alongside a patient, getting those conversations going, and to suddenly to be prevented from that. People felt it had a very detrimental effect on their ability to offer spiritual care. That's not to say that people came up with new creative ways very quickly. Of course we did. And again, we'll all have a story as to how we did that, and what it's been like. But in May last year, this was the picture, what was bothering people the most. There was a chance for people to write in a free text box just a little bit more about that people's experience, and that happened. And there was, well, 44,000 words written in the free text box, and just loads and loads of information, which was, yeah, Austin and Anne had quite a job to code, but it's there to be seen. Just people saying how it was in a way that didn't come through perhaps in the survey questions. So what's changed? Yeah, I think these three things particularly was people talking about being challenged to the core of our role, the core of our modeta, if you like, being present and being where we're most needed. These things were absolutely fundamentally changed. So the next step was for this group of people to lead in getting the survey results written up as articles, research articles for the journal. And some of those people are known to us. And the last slide should be this, oh, it's this one here, with the Journal of Pastoral Care and Counselling, which has now been published and is available. Invite you to have a look at it, because all the results of the survey have been written up as distinct articles about staff support, chaplaincy role, all the sort of different facets of information put into a series of articles in the journal. So it's a fascinating read. It really does give a very comprehensive snapshot into our activity, the activity of those of you who responded, and there'll be resonance of all those responses in your own practice. So just invite you to follow the link on the website to the journal. I'm going to stop sharing now. Oh, there we are, back. And just point you to it as an information source. Fundamentally, there were questions being asked about what's changed, what's different, what's been effective, what's worked for you. And those are really good questions for us all to be reflecting on at the end of this time. So it just felt like a good opportunity to share that survey information with you. And if you took part, great, thank you for doing that. That was really helpful. I'm pretty sure it's going to be repeated as an exercise at some point as well, just to get another viewpoint of how it is as we hopefully are emerging into another phase now. Good. Well, I've never share screened before. That was my little foray into technical new land. So thank you for bearing with me. I've got through a year and not shared screen. I don't know. I've just let other people do it, really. So, Mike, are we ready to break out into our rooms and just introduce one another to each other? There'll perhaps be new faces. Just giving us a chance in the next quarter of an hour to say hello to one another. If you want to speak a little about how it's been, what you've been doing, how you're feeling, let's just make those connections, and then we'll come back for 2 o'clock. I think there's a countdown on the breakout rooms, isn't there? So we can't stay and linger. So we'll have a quarter of an hour just to talk to one another and enjoy that connection. Thanks, Mike.